Every law is illegal.
Every law is illegal.
Every government upon the face of this earth today is illegal.
The early demise of reggae legend Bob Marley wasn't just a big blow to the family, but one that sent shockwaves through the reggae community. Fans were devastated. Questions were asked, but with each passing day, the painful loss hit harder, and no explanation could quench the despair that had filled the world, which had hoped for better. It was a moment of grief too hard to swallow, but somehow, shocking details of the truth were found in his garage. Stay tuned as we unveil these hidden secrets that have been discovered in Bob Marley's garage after his demise. The genesis of greatness. Born on February 6, 1945, at the farm of his maternal grandfather, 9 Mile, Bob Marley was welcomed into a Jamaican family of Norvon Sinclair Marley and Cedella Malcolm. Norvon was a white Jamaican who got married to an Afro-Jamaican at the age of 64, but didn't pay attention to their needs when necessary. Norvon provided little or no financial support for his wife and child. Up until he passed away when Marley was 10 years old, he rarely saw them. Marley eventually found solace in his maternal grandfather Omarion, who was, to a commendable extent, a positive influence on him. At the time, he was a musical genius who loved playing the guitar and singing as well, unleashing a rare potential daily that sought an opportunity for expression. At this point, Marley fell in love with his guitar, but never practiced. He only wanted to be around the sweet melody. Within a short time, Marley began making music with Neville Livingston, later known as Bunny Wailer, while attending Stepney Primary and Junior High School in 9 Mile, where they were childhood friends. At age 12, the ballgame changed. Marley left 9 Mile with his mother and moved to the Trenchtown section of Kingston. Marley's mother, who had once had a fling with Thaddeus Livingston, had a daughter named Claudette Pear, who also happened to be Bunny Wailer's younger sister and Marley's only sister. With Marley and Livingston living together in the same house in Trenchtown, their musical explorations deepened, including the new ska music and the latest rhythm and blues from United States radio stations, whose broadcasts reached Jamaica. At this point, it became obvious that Marley was already locked into the wave of music and was never going back for any reason. He formed a vocal group with Bunny Wailer and Peter Tosh, and they went on performing in small gigs that changed their perception of the music business. The lineup of the group formed was known variously as the Teenagers, the Wailing Rude Boys, the Wailing Wailers, and finally, simply as the Wailers. The burden of this group fell upon Marley's shoulders, and at one point, he almost slipped off due to excessive work. But Joe Higgs, a successful vocalist who lived in the neighborhood, encouraged him. Marley and the others did not play any instruments at this time for a reason. They were more interested in perfecting harmony as a vocal group. Higgs later became their instructor and played a phenomenal role in their group, while concurrently teaching Marley how to play the guitar. Marley's mother later married Edward Booker, a civil servant from the United States, giving Marley 2 half-brothers, Richard and Anthony. Over time, their bonds strengthened, but Marley's passion for music was never deterred. He lived in a different time zone, one that only a fulfilled life could help him navigate. Knowing that his world wouldn't be any better without music, Marley strived harder to make his name feasible among his contemporaries. And it all started in his early years in the music business. In 1962, Marley recorded 4 songs: Judge Not, One Cup of Coffee, Do You Still Love Me, and Terror at Federal Studios for local music producer Leslie Kong. 3 of the songs were released on Beverly's, with One Cup of Coffee being released under the pseudonym Bobby Martell. In 1963, his group gained traction and was discovered by record producer Coxsone. They released a single titled Simmer Down for the Cocaine label, which eventually became Jamaica's #1 in February 1960, selling an estimated 1,000 copies. However, this was just the beginning of an endless spree that went on to shake the world in its magnanimity. As their fame began to spread, they found themselves collaborating with established Jamaican musicians, including Ernest Ranglin, keyboardist Jackie Mittoo, and saxophonist Roland Alfonso. By 1966, things took a different turn. Braithwaite, Kelso, and Smith, members of the crew, all left, leaving the core trio of Bob Marley, Bunny Wailer, and Peter Tosh. They kept forging ahead, knowing that it would be a long time before they would find the gold they had been searching for with their music. Shortly after, Marley became interested in Rastafari's beliefs and began to grow dreadlocks. After a slight disagreement with Dodd, Marley and his band teamed up with Lee Scratch Perry and his studio band. In what was described as an explicit partnership, they recorded what many called their finest work, but couldn't keep up with the Post for obvious reasons. Marley and Perry split after a dispute regarding the assignment of recording rights. 1969 came with a different ballgame altogether because of a change that hit the Jamaican music scene at the time. The beat was slowed down, and in a swift response, Marley and his team attempted to adapt to this new, slow, steady, ticking rhythm. First heard in the Maytals song, Do the Reggae. Marley struck a deal with Leslie Kong, who was referred to as one of the major developers of the reggae sound. Their partnership worked, and Marley and his team found themselves recording with Leslie's studio musicians, called the Beverly All-Stars. The tracks recorded in this session illustrated the Wailers' earliest efforts in the new reggae style, and apparently they did more good for the genre than many who tried it at this time. Between 1968 and 1972, Bob, Peter Tosh, and Bunny Wailer made a recut of some old tracks with Jad Records in Kingston and London in an attempt to commercialize the Wailer sound. Bob and his team kept the fire burning, and not once did they stop or take a break amid their growth. Rise to stardom.
If you ask plenty musicians, them know it, but them can't do it.
In 1972, Marley made a bold move and signed with CBS Records in London and embarked on a UK tour with soul singer Johnny Nash. This marked the beginning of a new season of musical uplift. As the day progressed, it became clearer. While in London, the Wailers asked their road manager Brent Clark to introduce them to Chris Blackwell, who had licensed some of their Coxsone releases for his Island Records. The meeting was intended to discuss the royalties associated with these releases. Instead, the meeting turned in their favor, and they were offered an advance payment of £4,000 to record an album. At the time, Jimmy Cliff, Island's top reggae star, had recently left the label, and Blackwell was primed for a replacement. Their partnership made sense with each passing day, and at one point, Blackwell had to confess, "I was dealing with rock music, which was really rebel music. I felt that would really be the way to break Jamaican music. But you needed someone who could be that image. When Bob walked in, he really was that image." The Wailers eventually returned to Jamaica to record at Harry J's Kingston, which resulted in the album Catch a Fire. The album was released in April 1973, packaged like a rock record with a unique Zippo lighter lift top. Having sold several thousands in units, it received a positive critical reception. Later that year, they released the album Burnin', which included the song I Shot the Sheriff. The album drew attention worldwide, with many creating covers for some of the singles, including Eric Clapton's I Shot the Sheriff, which became his first US hit since Layla 2 years earlier. Although the band did extremely well, they didn't stay together for a lifetime. Irreconcilable differences ultimately led to their split. In 1974, the Wailers disbanded and everyone went their separate ways, pursuing solo careers. This became a new challenge for Marley, and within himself, he was certainly passionate about making a difference with his music. Despite the breakup, Marley continued recording as Bob Marley and the Wailers. He gathered a new set of band members, including brothers Carlton and Aston family man Barrett, on drums and bass, respectively, Junior Marvin and Al Anderson on lead guitar, Tyrone Downey and Earl Waya Lindo on keyboards, and Alvin Seco Patterson on percussion. They started the journey again, putting their talent to work for the overall good of the band. In 1975, the light shone on Bob Marley, and this time, it was going to stay forever. Marley had his first international breakthrough with his first hit outside Jamaica with a live session of No Woman, No Cry from the live album. This was immediately followed by his breakthrough album in the United States, Rastaman Vibration, in 1976, which reached the top 50 of the Billboard Soul charts. In December 1976, 2 days before Smile Jamaica, a free concert hosted by then Jamaican Prime Minister Michael Manley in an attempt to ease tensions between two warring political groups. Bob Marley, Rita, and his manager Don Taylor were wounded in an attack by unknown gunmen inside Marley's home. Taylor and Rita sustained serious injuries from which they later recovered, while Marley suffered minor wounds to his chest and arm. Nonetheless, the concert proceeded, and an injured Marley performed as scheduled 2 days after the attack. The members of the group Zap Pow played as Bob Marley's backup band before a festival crowd of 80,000, while members of his crew were still hiding. At the end of 1976, Marley moved to England after spending a month-long recovery and writing a sojourn at the site of Chris Blackwell's Compass Point Studios in Nassau, Bahamas. On 4 successive nights, Marley played with the Wailers at the Rainbow Theatre in London. The concert highlights were recorded in the BBC documentary Bob Marley Live at the Rainbow, 1977. While in England, he recorded the albums Exodus and Kaya, reinstating that he was not called the king of reggae music for nothing. In 1978, Marley recorded the video for the single Is This Love from the Kaya album at the Keskiti Centre, a black-led theatre and arts centre in London. At this time, several of his songs were topping charts, including Exodus, which stayed on the British album charts for 56 consecutive weeks, along with several others like Waiting in Vain, Jamming, and One Love. During this time in London, Marley was arrested and convicted of possession of a small quantity of cannabis. He later returned to Jamaica and performed at the One Love Peace concert, again aimed at calming the warring parties. Under the name Bob Marley and the Wailers, 11 albums were released, 4 live albums and 7 studio albums. Marley continued to wow audiences with his singing ability, gracing concerts, tours, small gigs, and in house setups that resonated with his persona. He grew to become a voice that couldn't be ignored worldwide, even as a reggae artist. However, who knew that all these feats would vanish like vapor, leaving many with memories too fragile to forget? The unforeseen trauma.
I was at home with my people, so I didn't need to be fighting no more, right? I was in the camp, and there was no war.
Just when Marley was having a good time with his music, a dangerous piece came that gradually consumed him. In 1977, Marley was diagnosed with a type of skin cancer under the nail of his right big toe. Contrary to what many had thought, it wasn't an injury caused primarily by a football match that year, but was instead a symptom of already existing cancer. Horrifying as it was, he managed to put himself together while seeking a permanent remedy. Marley followed up medically and was required to see 2 doctors before undergoing a biopsy. After thorough scrutiny by professionals, it was confirmed that Marley had contracted acral lentiginous melanoma. Unlike other melanomas, which typically appear on skin exposed to the sun, acral lentiginous melanoma often occurs in areas that are easily overlooked, such as the soles of the feet and under the toenails. Although it was the most common type of melanoma in people with dark skin, it was not widely recognized and was not mentioned in the most popular medical textbooks of the time. All advice by medical professionals to amputate the toe fell on deaf ears, as Marley rejected any idea of amputation, citing that it would hinder his performing career while also distorting his spiritual beliefs. However, instead of amputating the toenail and nail bed were removed, and a skin graft was taken from his thigh to cover the area. Despite his illness, Marley put up a valiant fight and continued to perform on tours and concerts. He released an album in May 1980, and his band also completed the European leg of the Uprising tour, playing its biggest concert to about 10,000 people at San Siro Stadium in Milan, Italy. It was a tough decision, but Marley preferred to give it all for what he loved and adored most. Due to complications from the cancer, his final outdoor concert was played on July 12, 1980, at Dallamount Park in Dublin, Ireland. From there, he embarked on a tour of the United States, where he performed 2 shows at Madison Square Garden in New York City. However, what followed was an unforeseen disaster that shattered him completely. On the 21st of September, 1980, Marley collapsed while jogging in Central Park and was taken to the hospital, where it was found that the cancer had done more damage. The cancer had spread to his brain, lungs, and liver. His last concert took place 2 days later at the Stanley Theatre in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The only known photographs from the show were included in Kelvin MacDonald's 2012 documentary film, Marley. Shortly afterward, his health deteriorated as cancer spread throughout his body. The rest of the tour was canceled, and Marley sought treatment at the Joseph Issels Clinic in Rottach-Egern, Bavaria, Germany. This time, it was a 50-50 chance of survival. At the hospital, he underwent an alternative cancer treatment called ISSSEL's treatment, which is partly based on avoiding certain foods, fluids, and other substances. By this time, the tension was high, and ears were pressed to the walls of the care center, hoping that he would make it alive and unscathed. Unfortunately, things didn't turn out as many had hoped. The tragic loss and hidden truths. Regardless of his state at the time, hopes were high. Many were optimistic, believing he would emerge stronger. However, after 8 months of alternative treatment failing to treat his advancing cancer effectively, Marley boarded a plane to Jamaica. During the flight, his condition worsened, and his vital functions deteriorated to the point where they were packing up. In what wasn't part of the original plan, the plane diverted to Miami, Florida, where he was rushed to Cedars of Lebanon Hospital, now known as the University of Miami Hospital. Unfortunately, he didn't make it out of there and left everyone in pain shortly after. Marley passed away on the 11th of May, 1981, at the age of 36 due to the spread of cancer to his lungs and brain. Marley's final words to his son Ziggy were, "On your way up, take me up. On your way down, don't let me down." On May 21st, Marley was given a state funeral in Jamaica that combined elements of Ethiopian Orthodoxy and Rastafari tradition. He was buried in a chapel near his birthplace in 9 Mile with his red Gibson Les Paul guitar, a Bible opened at Psalm 23, and a stalk of cannabis placed there by his widow, Rita Marley. Prime Minister Edward Seaga delivered the final eulogy for Marley, saying, "His voice was an omnipresent cry in our electronic world. His sharp features, majestic looks, and prancing style are a vivid etching on the landscape of our minds. Bob Marley was never seen again. He was an experience that left an indelible imprint with each encounter. Such a man cannot be erased from the mind. He is part of the collective consciousness of the nation." The reggae community stood still for days in mourning for their loss, and loving fans couldn't control their tears as they reminisced about his fond memories, stating that there would never be another Bob Marley, nor would there ever be anyone like him again. The mourning went on for days, and several well-wishing messages were sent on-site and online, attesting to the fact that he was a good man loved by all. However, just when the pain was easing, another bombshell reopened old wounds. It didn't do anyone much good. It only reignited tears that had almost dried up in everyone's eyes. When Bob Marley passed at the age of 36, his estate was estimated to be worth over $30 million. However, because he followed Rastafarian beliefs, which saw wills as taboo, he never created one, nor did he leave anyone behind. This led to a lengthy and complex legal dispute over who would be the sole beneficiary and have control over it fairly. This became a prolonged war among family members, and day by day, they washed their dirty linens in public, disregarding the revered legacy of their father. Under Jamaican law, without a will, his wealth was subjected to pass-through intestate succession law. His wife, Rita Marley, was entitled to 10% of the estate he left behind, along with a lifetime interest in the rest. The remaining assets were to be divided among his 11 recognized children. This became a tug of war, and everything Bob had taken years to build became the reason why the children had to bow to loving each other and making things work, a notion that misrepresented the legacy Marley stood for. However, after a long, heated battle that almost tore the family apart, they came to a consensus regarding their stance on the estate. Eventually, Rita Marley and Marley's children gained significant control over his estate through the company Tuff Gong International, named after Marley's record label. The estate is now managed by Marley's family, with key figures including Rita Marley and their children such as Ziggy Marley, Cedella Marley, and Stephen Marley. These individuals play active roles in preserving Bob Marley's legacy through music, branding, and business ventures. However, it didn't end there. Among his possessions were cars like a 1976 3 pickup, a BMW 1602, and an E3 200. These were all items in his most revered garage, but after he passed, the center could not hold again. His most treasured vehicle among these cars was the Land Rover 1970 Series 3. After his demise, his children didn't do justice to it, but allowed it to rot in the garage and eventually fall into shambles. However, as time went on and the light of their wrong deeds played before their eyes, they did something amazing to secure its original condition. On his 70th posthumous birthday, his children thought about what to give him as a gift. They concluded that his most cherished car, the Land Rover, should be restored. Early on, the rusty car was relocated to ATL Group in Jamaica, which collaborated with Land Rover UK headquarters to restore it to its former glory over an estimated period of a year. By February, the job on the truck had been completed, While a free concert and celebration were ongoing, the car remained wrapped until, at a special moment, it was unveiled to guests and hundreds of visitors. According to a BBC Jamaican correspondent who was present at this year's late Bob Marley celebration, when the restored Land Rover was finally revealed, it came as a bit of a surprise. It wasn't a nut and bolt, chassis-off rebuild, the sort that's becoming more and more popular with these cars, but rather a sympathetic restoration. It had the patina of age on the stainless steel trim pieces, but it was still Bob's old car. Personal life. Marley married Alfarita Constantia Rita Anderson in Kingston, Jamaica, on the 10th of February, 1966. Their marriage was a pure testament to the existence of true love, as they had consistently demonstrated it throughout their time together. He had many children with her. 3 were born to his wife, Rita, and 2 additional children were adopted from Rita's previous relationship as their own, and they bear the Marley name. However, the official Marley website acknowledges 11 children. Some other websites have named individuals who also claim to be family members. Marley was a long-time member of the Rastafari movement, whose culture was a key element in the development of reggae. He became an ardent proponent of Rastafari, and nothing would have stopped him from living his full potential. He took Rastafarian music out of the socially deprived areas of Jamaica and onto the international music scene, where he was a significant player. As a Rastafarian, Marley was deeply invested in the Haile Selassie movement in Ethiopia, which he believed was an incarnation of God or Jah. He was steadfast in his beliefs and could become aggressive if his intentions were misunderstood. However, the light of God shone on him later in life, and he immediately switched allegiance to Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity due to his brokenness. Shortly before his demise, he was baptized with the name Berhane Selassie. When he was still a fervent supporter of the Rastafarian movement, Marley supported the legalization of cannabis, which Rastafarians believed was an aid to meditation. Marley's first encounter with cannabis was in 1966 when he converted to the Rastafari faith from Catholicism. He was arrested the following year after being caught with cannabis, but switched to marijuana, which was according to his religious beliefs regarding marijuana patronage. Marley once said, "When you smoke herb reveals itself to you. All the wickedness you do, the herb reveals itself to yourself. Your conscience shows up clear because herbs make you meditate. It's only a natural thing. And it grows like a tree." His acquaintance with marijuana was not based on sentiment, but was seen as a necessity that everyone had to live on if they ever wanted productivity. All of this was because he had a connection with Jah, which he believed paved the way for wisdom and philosophies. Marley was also a Pan-Africanist who believed in the unity of African people worldwide. His beliefs were rooted in Rastafarian religious doctrines. Most of the experiences that Marley shared were truly a product of the inspiration he drew from Marcus Garvey. He went on to incorporate his beliefs about Pan-African communities with themes in songs like Zimbabwe, Exodus, Survival, Black Man Redemption, and Redemption Song. Marley's lattermost song also drew inspiration from a 1937 speech given by Marcus Garvey in Nova Scotia. Marley held that the independence of African countries from European domination was a victory for all those in the African diaspora. In the song Africa Unite, he expressed his desire for all people in the African diaspora to come together and fight against what he perceived as Babylon. Similarly, in the song Zimbabwe, Marley marks the liberation of the entire continent of Africa and evokes a call for unity among all Africans, both within and outside Africa. Bob was a phenomenal figure who was fearless and vocal about what he believed was right, and you dared not stop him because he wouldn't take no for an answer. Outstanding legacy. Marley's years on Earth left a trailblazing legacy, and even years after his passing, his impact still lives on. He cannot be forgotten in a hurry. In an orderly manner, a statue was inaugurated next to the National Stadium on Arthur Winter Drive in Kingston to commemorate Marley. In 2006, the New York City Department of Education named a portion of Church Avenue, from Remsen Avenue to East 98th Street, in the East Flatbush section of Brooklyn as Bob Marley Boulevard. Day by day, his influence continued to grow, and it showed no signs of stopping. In 2008, a statue of Marley was inaugurated in Banatski, Serbia. Internationally, Marley's message continues to resonate with various indigenous communities. He evolved into a global symbol, which has been endlessly merchandised through various media. Despite this, author Dave Thompson lamented what he perceived to be the pacification of Marley that came with his commercialization, stating, "Bob Marley ranks among both the most popular and the most misunderstood figures in modern culture. That the machine has utterly emasculated Marley is beyond doubt. Gone from the public record is the ghetto kid who dreamed of Che Guevara and the Black Panthers and pinned their posters up in the Whalers' Soul Shack record store, who believed in freedom and the fighting which it necessitated, and dressed the part on an early album sleeve, whose heroes were James Brown and Muhammad Ali, whose god was Rastafari, and whose sacrament was marijuana." He added, "Instead, the Bob Marley who surveys his kingdom today is a smiling benevolence, a shining sun, a waving palm tree, and a string of hits that tumble out of polite radio like candy from a gumball machine. Of course, it has assured his immortality, but it has also demeaned him beyond recognition. Bob Marley was worth far more." It was clear that Marley's legacy was real proof that one can leave a lasting mark on the earth, and even after they are long gone, generations can delve through their archives to seek guidance. Marley is referenced in the 2007 action thriller I Am Legend, where the protagonist names his daughter after him. His music is also used in the film. Furthermore, several films about Marley's life have been produced. A feature-length documentary about his life, Rebel Music, won various awards at the Grammys, with contributions from Rita, the Wailers, and Marley's lovers and children. The life of Marley was beautiful, and even though he left too soon, his life was special in every way. What is your favorite thought about Bob Marley, and what impression did he leave in your mind even after he is long gone? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.